Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sarah, a blogger, small business owner extraordinaire, on a path to career, creative, and financial freedom. Welcome. Thank you for joining me here today. I really appreciate it. Y'all may or may not know that I am a blogger. I have a lifestyle kind of entrepreneurial blog on my website at heyredshop.com/blog, and it's mostly just where I talk about what it's like to be an entrepreneur. I talk about other small businesses and lifestyle stuff. On the flip side of that, I also have a movie blog where I really get to kind of nerd out and talk about movies that I've seen, movies that I liked, movies that I didn't like, what I'm looking forward to seeing, and that brings me to the subject today. Oh, and that blog is called eating-film.com, and I'll put links of everything, in the description box. To me, the entire month of October is one of my favorite months, not only because of Halloween, but because here in America, that's when a lot of, not in October specifically, more in fall, is when studios start releasing horror movies, thriller movies, suspense movies, like under the umbrella of the horror genre. There are a couple that came out that I was like, not really too excited. The Invitation, I was like, I could wait on it. What is this last Halloween movie called? Halloween Kills. I was like, I could wait on that as well. Not, because now with that franchise, first of all, y'all are extremely lucky that Jamie Lee Curtis wanted to be involved with that project, because outside of her, it was very much, that Jason movie a few years ago. It was very much the Nightmare on Elm Street remake a few years. I think they both came out that same year or within a few years of each other. And I was like, okay, sure. It's, it's been long enough. The Nightmare on Elm Street has a very long series. So did the Jason franchise, has a very long series, a lot of which it was starting to get really wacky cuckoo, less scary, more just like we're in space now with Jason's body somehow making it into space. We're doing crossover movies. Wasn't a fan of that either. Lately, Netflix has been seeking their fangs into a lot of like classic franchise TV shows, movies, and adapting books now. Because you have source material, this right now is directed to the writers at Netflix and the executives. Because y'all have source material, a lot of these productions came out a lot better than some of the other stuff y'all just be throwing at the wall, literally. They must just be throwing ideas out there just to see. Just not even concerned about like artistic value, do the people care? Just like, let's just throw it out there. However, that does give not really known authors and other creative professionals the opportunity to create things that are really great, like Stranger Things, like Squid Games. I'm just like, okay, so let's see what you got. The first thing that caught my attention was besides Stranger Things, which I enjoyed the first season. The second season I was like, ooh, teenagers, ooh, attitude. It's a lot. And I was like, okay, well, sure. This last season, I'm not quite sure how they're dividing it up. So I wasn't sure how to feel once the season ended. But this is not just about Stranger Things. This is about like all of the spooky stuff that I have been loving on Netflix. Now, Netflix will give weird ideas a try. I don't know how they're able to afford to. Parfumer, which is the French, I think it's the French version, is based off of the book Perfume, the Story of a Murderer, which already had a feature film a few years ago. I have actually read the book and enjoyed the book. I thought the book was very, very well done. And then I think, I want to say like, I don't know, like 4 years ago, they came out with a series that I think is in German called Perfume, and I think it's like a twist on the story. So I was like, this is very interesting. You guys have like two different perspectives of the same thing, or is this supposed to be like something that comes after, but you have it under like a different name? Do y'all not even know that you have one in French, one in German, and that a feature film already exists? I don't know. I don't know. But I was like, okay, I'm interested. First of all, we all know that Netflix's algorithm for recommending things is trash, but I did see a trailer for it and I was like, okay, maybe I'll check the first series and see what they kind of did there, and then maybe move on to the second one. So maybe. But the Fear Street series is one that I was like, okay, I've been reading R.L. Stine's Fear Street series since before it was age appropriate for me. And I am a huge fan of his work. There were, the Fear Street is a street that's in the Shady Side universe. It's basically like, I can't even compare it to Marvel because there's just so many characters and so many scenarios, but basically it's like serial killer, it's like supernatural and highly realistic horror scenarios that affect the teen population of Shady Side. And I was like, how are you guys gonna handle all of this material? And it completely blew my mind because they took it in an entirely different route, but it all comes full circle. First of all, the fact that you split it into 3 series that are separated by time, very clever, because there's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on with the story, and you really needed to have that time, and you really needed that like scope. Not using a traditional like feature film length, the fact that these are like 2.5, 3 hours long, I was like also very good, because if this had been separated into a series, I would not have enjoyed it. There's way too many moving parts going on, and the idea of creating like a cliffhanger or lack of a cliffhanger at the end of each episode, that just seemed like way too much. Honestly, if I'm thinking about it, they could have did that with Stranger Things as well. I feel like that format would have worked, but I think this is the first time that they've done something like this before, where they've arranged the story in such a way where it's chunked out like this. So the music edits, I love them so much, because the present day is in the 90s, as it should be, because that's when all these books were published, that's when all these came out. If you picked up one nowadays, the references in it would all be from the 90s or the 80s. So that made a lot of sense to me. I enjoyed the little like on the nose references in the series about the books, and I like that it centers on a modern story where the main characters are young adults, because all of the main characters in these stories are young adults. So I really enjoyed the fact that so many of the like larger elements were taken from the books and added into the story, that it wasn't acting like the stories did not exist or that this universe did not exist, that there's history there and how that is affecting the present. So I really enjoyed that series, the Fear Street series. Highly recommend it if you have some time. Plus it's just like, it's mayhem and madness, and it's really gory, but it's also lighthearted and fun, and the characters really get a chance to develop, and you really feel for them. You really feel connected to them, which is all I was worried about. I was like, so many of these horror stories are remakes or adaptations of stuff that already exists, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and we already know what to expect. We already know the main characters, or we already know the origin story. So something like this, where it was like leaving a lot up to interpretation, I really enjoyed. So definitely recommend Fear Street. Something that's coming out in October that was supposed to come out at the end of August, but then it disappeared from the new and hot category, Netflix, and then reappeared for the first week of October. October 2nd, the Midnight Club is supposed to come out. Now, the Midnight Club is based on a book by Christopher Pike. This book by Christopher Pike. Christopher Pike is one of my favorite authors, period. He has a huge catalog of children's books that I wouldn't say are precisely for children, and young adult books that I've been just randomly telling my friends for years. Each one of these books could be made into a standalone film. Each and every one of them. They're all, the stories are so tragic and so sad and so memorable. They're not like, I feel like a lot of parents thought these types of stories were more like the Harlequin novel horror version, where it's just something like shocking and scary, and then you kind of, it's not something that you remember. But I've been hanging on to his books. Were some of the first that I bought brand new from Borders. Do y'all remember Borders? I remember Borders because brand new books were expensive to me, and I saved up my money so that I could get a hold of these. The Midnight Club is a very interesting one to start on, and the fact that it was made into a series. I thought it would be more like a feature film. The Midnight Club is a group made up of young adults that are living at a hospice. So they have been diagnosed with terminal illnesses and have been sent there to be, you know, taken care of and safe during this point in their lives, and to be around other kids their age who are going through the same things. So it's like, it's already sad. The Midnight Club is one of my favorite books because it has stories within stories. The Midnight Club is a small group of residents who get together during the midnight hour to tell ghost stories. And when I tell you, those stories were very good. It sort of reminds me of the Twilight Zone. Those kinds of stories. And if you don't know what the Twilight Zone is, look it up! But that is what I'm genuinely looking forward to seeing. Out of all the things that Netflix has going on in October, which, you know, they don't put everything that's gonna come out in the new and hot list. They sneak some stuff in. And I'm just like, I don't care. The only thing that I really want to see is the Midnight Club. That's all that I really want to see from you in the month of October. Should something else come out and surprise me, I'd be very shocked. So I do have a Pinterest board where I put, because I see a lot of trailers, I see a lot of suggestions for movies all the time, and plus I have my own list of movies that I have always wanted to see or been meaning to watch, just like random things. Like, I think the most recent blog post that I posted on my Eating Film movie blog was about Sleeping with the Enemy, 1991 drama thriller with Julia Roberts. It's about her escaping an abusive marriage. And I've seen references of this film, like, in other movies and TV shows and stuff, but I've never taken the time to actually watch the film. And it was like something that was always on my list to watch. And I finally did. I'm not going to say too much more about it. Everything that I have to say about it is in that blog post. The Midnight Club was one that had me genuinely excited. More because I know the author, so I know what he's capable of, but also because the last young adult horror series that was adapted was by one of my other favorite authors, R.L. Stine, and it was very good. So I'm like, okay, You have plenty of source material. The cast, I'm not too familiar with the casting. I'm not too familiar with the directors. So a few movies that I really liked and a few series, because I don't really get into TV series very often. There were a couple that got me. And one of them was Love, Death, and Robots. Cerebral and amazing and creative. They're not at all for kids. They really kind of blow out this whole stereotype about the type of people that watch cartoons or animated things, because these are absolutely not for children at all. And the variety of stories, some of them are just like silly and dumb, you know, but told in such an eloquent way. I recommend all seasons. The stories are very emotionally engaging. Some of them are so suspenseful and thrilling, or just so interesting that you can't stop watching. So I highly recommend any season from the Love, Death, and Robots series. Another one that I really liked was The Thrilling Adventures of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I've never read the comic and I've never read the graphic novel. I did watch the feature film when I was a kid with Melissa Joan Hart, and I did watch the sitcom series, so I am familiar with the story. This version is the complete opposite of all of those things, and I loved it for exactly that reason. It's a gory, it's graphic, there's a lot of mature themes, and it kind of pushes over the boundaries of like societal niceties when it comes to young adult TV series and what you're expecting to see, even in a series that involves like the supernatural. So you have like the storyline of, you know, young love and romance and all teenage hormones, and then you have the more graphic story of a satanic coven and what life is like there versus normal everyday human life. It's very interesting because there's so many things that they refer to culturally. It's not framed as and something eccentric that they do just because they are witches or because they worship Satan. It's more because it is a part of their history and culture, and they refer back to passages from, I think they call it the Book of the Beast, whatever. There are stories and characters and lessons, and it just gets really deep in a way that I wasn't expecting. And I really enjoyed how the storyline moved within something that complicated and detailed. Also, I think it caused a bit of a stir on the internet when it first came out. An actual Church of Night, I think, was offended by some of the details, but I don't know if they were offended because it was close to what they actually do or because it was not. I don't remember, but I did enjoy the series. The first and second seasons, the first one got me, the second one really got me. The diversity, I really appreciated. The casting is great. I really was very concerned about who the aunts would be, what their characters would be like, and I was absolutely blown away. I love them both. They were great choices for those characters. They do not sit in the background. They are main characters. The cast is pretty huge. I did appreciate that because the series, from what I remember, went on for seasons. There was a lot happening. With all of this sheer information, it made sense for it to be spread out the way that it was, and that there were so many different characters and so many different moving parts. I really enjoyed the series. I would highly recommend it. If you're easily offended, don't bother. Love, Death, and Robots and the Chilling. Oh! Velvet Buzzsaw. Velvet Buzzsaw came out in, I think, 2019 with a huge star-studded cast. It is, to me, an underrated gem. A very unique horror movie. It's a solid horror movie. Now, It came out a few years ago, so I feel free to talk about it. If you haven't seen it or plan on seeing it, you can skip through this part. But the idea of hauntings, a poltergeist, in this way is not new, but the way the story is told is very unique and very interesting. The idea of it focusing on the art world and the different roles that people play within that world to make it what it is. I loved it. It's less about seeing things from the outside. It starts with the death of a man who was a master of his art, and unfortunately he was also someone who was severely abused as a child. He had a lot of trauma and things going on in his life, and he put that into his art. And the film touches on so many different things, like the idea that of art being a way to communicate a spiritual experience to people, and the idea that madness being transferred into these pieces of art and affecting those who seek to profit from it was just, it was so clever and so interesting. To me, it completely came full circle, because a lot of things that you normally want to figure out in a horror movie like this have either already been explained or are completely irrelevant. There is no remedy for this situation. There is no way to make amends for what happened. It's gorgeous. You know, you have all of these huge pieces of art, and the deaths themselves were very creative and were themselves almost like works of art. There was a huge variety in the types of deaths. It almost reminded me a little bit of Final Destination, where a bunch of people died in very creative ways. Some of them were ironic. And that was kind of messed up, but also it made a point. And in the Final Destination movies, it was death that was causing their deaths. And in this one, it was the spirit of this person. I highly recommend it. The characters are developed enough that you really get a sense of who they are. The way that it's shot is just so interesting, and the build-up and the tension reminds me of almost like a Hitchcock thriller, where the escalations start really small and are almost the camera doesn't make a point to point you towards what it is. So you're often very close to people's faces as they're seeing things that other people can't see and seeing their reaction to things. There's only a few things on Netflix that I have watched more than once, and that movie is one of them. So a couple of movies on my watch list are Come True, which is about a young woman named Sarah. I don't see my name often in films, so that kind of gets my attention. So she suffers from some kind of sleeping disorder. I couldn't figure out if it was about night terrors or something similar. And I've noticed this trend in horror movies lately about lack of sleep, quality of sleep, demons, spirits, supernatural elements involving sleep. This one looked a little different because it seemed to not just involve the effects of a lack of sleep, the importance of sleep, going into the details of that, but more about what happens when someone is in the dreaming state. Kindred is about a couple that travels to England, I believe, England or Scotland, and it is I think he's her boyfriend or husband, her boyfriend's family, and he is either injured or killed in some kind of accident, and she is unable to travel back home because she is, I think her pregnancy develops to the point where she was not it was not safe for her to fly. And weird stuff starts happening. Very interested, very, like, I want to know if this is like a Rosemary's Baby kind of thing. I'm very interested. So The Feast is a foreign film. I think it's Finnish. I will make sure to add all the info in the description box. And it centers, it looks like there's some kind of event going on at some rich guy's house. They've hired a very strange person to help with the event. Her title, her role is not really defined in all the trailers. It just seems more like they use her as like waitress or to help with the catering and things like that. And it's very creepy. It sort of reminds me of Goodnight Mother or Goodnight Mommy in the way that it's shot and the way that it looks. And I'm not entirely sure, but she seems to be like putting things like into the food. I don't know if the point is to poison them or something, but I was intrigued. I was like, let me see what's going on here. So The Platform is one that is on Netflix, and it's about a guy waking up in this weird room where a platform is lowered, and the platform has all of this food on it, and I guess this is the only food that they get over the course of a day, and the lower the platform goes, the less food that there is. It looks really weird and really like disturbing, and kind of reminds me of like Old Boy in a way. It's like people that wake up somewhere that they've never been for reasons that they don't know. I probably don't want to know, but I want to know. So I'm going to check that out too. Another one is Piercing. Looks like from the trailer it's about a man who hires a sex worker with the intent to kill her. Don't know if, and on the flip side of that, he appears to be like a regular guy, like a family man. He has a wife and kid. I was very interested in what? Like what are the logistics of something like this? And because her character just doesn't seem to be who he thinks she is either. So it's like two people lying with ulterior motives. I don't know what her motives are, but his motives are made very clear in the trailer. But something else is going on, and I must get to the bottom of it. So that's on my list as well. Sound of Violence. And I found this one on one of my random searches. I just be doing random searches because the suggestions on a lot of these platforms like Apple TV, Voodoo, whatever, are not very good for me. So I just like to just search. I could search by date or whatever catches my attention. The Sound of Violence, when I watched the trailer, it looked like it was about a girl who was deaf up until a burglary attempt. It looks like someone broke into her parents' house, and I'm not sure if her parents were killed, but during the course of that event, her hearing came back. Next thing you know, you see her killing somebody and recording the sound of it. So I don't know what's going on. I recognize that main actress from the Scream movie, which I did write about on Eating Films. So if you guys want to check that out, feel free to. But she's a very good actress. I did like her character in that movie, so I was like, let me see what's going on here. What is the correlation? How does this happen? And what is the point? Some of these stories are just so intimate and personal to the characters themselves that it's difficult to like engage or find it interesting when it's like so wrapped up in itself. It's kind of like Nope, where I went in not really knowing. I didn't even say the word Nope near my phone before I went to see that movie. And yes, I did go to see it, and yes, I did love it. I'm a movie lover. I watch a lot of movies. I really enjoyed it. And I also understand why it has such polarizing reviews and such mixed reviews. I knew that was going to happen as soon as I finished watching it. I was like, oh, people are going to hate this movie. People are going to think it's dumb and it's slow and all these other things. I get why. But as a movie person, I loved it. So the last two movies on my list are A Zombie Child. Is about a girl who transfers to her new school, and as part of a way to introduce herself to other people, she talks about her, I think it was her grandfather or great grandfather who was mistaken for someone who was dead but came back to life, and like the story of his sort of like his life. The characters, being who they are, decide to perform some kind of ritual with, we'll just say, devastating consequences. I don't know what the consequences are. Let's just see. Because voodoo does not get its just due in the horror genre. I think one of the, I don't want to say best examples of voodoo, but to me one of the most like well-constructed ways that it's been worked into a storyline was the third season of American Horror Story. That was something that was like well layered into the storyline, that played a key role in the story, that had like infrastructure, like it wasn't just one person just doing things. There's history and intent and details all around. I did watch the movie Spell with Omar Hardwick, and that was, I don't even want to say folk horror because they didn't really go into details about it. It was more like they came upon the situation where nothing needed to be explained or was explained. You know, you would see things and not know what the purpose of it was until it was being like used, and then it became clear visually but not really explained. The Skeleton Key was another horror movie. They didn't really go into it, but it does have a very real presence within the story and within the community where the story is set, which is Louisiana. So that was kind of interesting. And I don't really avoid any kind of horror. Body horror, you know, kind of freaks me out a little bit. It's not something I avoid unless I feel like it's really gratuitous and the only point is to like gross people out. It's not used to tell a character's story or to further develop the storyline or a character. It's just there to get a reaction from the audience. So the last movie on my list is Men with Jesse Buckley. It's an A24 produced movie. The trailer was confusing. It seemed like she was a woman on vacation on her own, and it was very strange. Each person that she came across, whether it was a caretaker or a priest or a child, they all had the same man's face. From the visual aspects, I was very intrigued by what the story could be and who the character could be. So very interested, can't wait to see it. Please let me know if you guys have any recommendations for the Halloween season. So thank y'all for spending your time with me, and I'll see you next time.